Welcome to the Fourth Branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch program. Welcome. Today we continue the conversation about the race to 2020. We will also take a look at today as why there is still a record deficit of leadership in the Republican Party. And lastly, we will take a look at the life of Kathy Griffin beyond the 2017 debacle. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. the race to 2020. It is for any country, especially one which is claimed to be a democratic country, such as the United States of America, to have to reflect on decisions that were made, especially if those decisions would cost not only the current generation but generations to come. Now, for those who went to the poll in 2016 and voted Donald Trump in office, there is no lack of explanation, no lack of reason they chose to vote for an individual who, by any analysis, looked through any prism, considered in any way, shape, or form, was qualified to become the commander-in-chief, but most importantly, did not have any virtue, any interest, any loyalty to the country. Now, for those who voted and supported Donald Trump, they beg to differ. That's when we know the country is in serious trouble. When you have a political party which claims to be Christian, which has labeled most of its members, want to embrace and even scream at the top of their lungs that they are Christian, when you have a political party which most members claim to have core values, family values, when you have a political party, legislators, leaders, and all those whose primary job would have been to guide the constituent, to show them the right, the correct path, but all of whom chose to simply shrug it off, go along, and at times even become accomplices to protect an individual who have demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt he has no interest in the well-being of our country, in the well-being of the Republic. An individual who has proven to be only interested in himself, in his agenda, in his business. When you have a situation like that, you know that the country is in serious trouble. Now, one was quick to surmise after the 2016 presidential election that once Donald Trump was installed in the Oval Office, he would become a different individual. Even Obama thought that the office of the presidency would humble him and it would be just different, so different from the individual who was a candidate. But after 2 years, we know that's not what happened. We know that it had gotten worse. Behaviors has gotten much, much worse. Languages, actions, coupled with the power of the presidency, has made the country a much less desirable country for anyone to vie for, to yearn to come to. But despite what members in the media have said in regards to the political party, it is not Donald Trump which has turned the Republican Party into what it is. Or Donald Trump could not possibly dream of doing any such thing. The Republican Party has been going down that path for quite some time now. And in a series which is, we've already given you a preview, which we will be bringing to you in the coming month, we will show you that there is 100 years of this type of behavior in the Republican Party, which has been almost, for lack of a better word, sad to think that politician leaders couldn't care less about their constituent. But they have a way to make certain that the constituent continue to vote them in office. As such, the 2020 presidential election cannot be just another presidential election. It cannot be. The country has suffered tremendously. Many, especially in the Republican Party, do not see that because they are blinded by lies, by falsehoods, by the whole Republican Party legislators, leaders who continue to advance falsehood, to continue to mislead their constituent instead of educating them. But for some reason, those constituents continue to believe that everything is great and fantastic. Now, the only hope that we have is by taking a look at the past, at the history of our country. There was a time in the history of our country that there were as many individuals in the government, legislators, senators, congressmen, members even of the armed forces, who stood on the wrong side of history, which triggered the Civil War in 1861. So we have been there. We know that there is at times that many people choose to do the wrong things, but on top of that, choose to fight to keep that in place. We saw that happen in 1861. Individual who happened to have weapon who triggered the Civil War. No, it was not. It was calculated by congressmen, by senators, by armed forces personnel, by people in business, and so on. There were almost half of the country was on the wrong side of history. So it is no surprise to any individual who studies history, to any individual who shows some interest in history, that today the country once again is going down the wrong path, and yet millions continue to walk that path and would argue with anyone who tried to reason with them. As I mentioned, it wasn't just a few individuals with weapons who triggered the Civil War. It was people you would consider leaders, people who were educated, people who knew better, And yet those were the same people that plunged the country into one of the darkest moments in its history. The individual who voted Donald Trump in office knew, it was no secret, that Donald Trump is a scoundrel. Donald Trump is a liar. They knew Donald Trump has done a lot of harm to businesses, to individuals. During the 2016 general election, more than 20 women came forward and accused Donald Trump of sexually harassing them, of sexually assaulting them. And yet, the individuals who have family values, the individuals who are Christian, the individuals who have moral ethics, all of those millions of individuals went to the poll and had no qualm to vote in office someone as despicable as Donald Trump. And yes, they do have rationale to have done that. So we know the country has fallen at the bottom, to the bottom. But what makes the predicament even worse is the fact that 2 years in, those same individual, Christian, who have family values, who have moral ethics, those same individuals continue to support that despicable man. And yes, they do have rationale. As I mentioned, what gives us hope is the fact that as a country, we were in a similar, comparable predicament before. As such, for the rest of us, as it was in 1861, who choose to be on the right side of history, as the rest of us who understand what the country is going through, our institution, the rule of law, the Constitution, all of which are under attack, not just by Donald Trump, but by the whole Republican Party, legislators and constituents alike. In other words, no one can rely on any Republican to help remedy the situation. It is not a small thing. It is not at all. Because one would expect that someone who claimed to be a Christian would abide by Christian values. Someone who claimed to have family values would, at the very least, act as individuals who have family values. An individual who claims to have moral ethics would abide by those values as well. But unfortunately, we have seen an intransigence in the behavior of those who always love labels and yet don't see any problem living the life of the most depraved individuals in our society. They are willing to insult, they are willing to hurt, they are willing to even kill in order to continue doing what is wrong. Yes, our country is in the wrong path, and we can say that many times until the 2020. And it needs to be redressed. We need to redeem the rule of law, to reinstate rather the rule of law. We need to bring back the importance of our Constitution. We need to attribute the importance our institutions have, those institutions which have protected our country for centuries. We need to restore decency in the Oval Office. As such, for the past few weeks, we have been presenting to you the candidates who vie for the nomination of the Democrat Party. And one by one, we have been featuring them and give you a little bit of information about their credentials, about their experience, but most importantly, about what they propose to do if any one of them becomes president, the 46th president of the United States. Our country needs to be redressed because the path we're in is the wrong path. And history will judge the Republican Party harshly, the leaders, the politicians, for going along and taking the country down a path which is detrimental not just to our institution, but damaging to future generations. We will bring you Amy Klobuchar. She is one of the candidates in the Democrat Party who also vies for the nomination in order to take on Donald Trump in the 2020 general election. We will tell you a little bit about her shortly.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question?
Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. Before we talk about Amy Klobuchar, the one of the Democrat candidates vying for the nomination, let's take a look at another important aspect of our country. The United States, our government in particular, has waged war across the globe for over a century now. Now, the premise we always used to go to war is to liberate people who are under dictatorship, under authoritarian regimes, and we use resources, our soldiers, lies. We use a lot of money. We sacrifice families at home, and we wage war across the world to do one thing: to bring democracy to those countries. At least so we say. But it is ironic that we waste so many of our resources, we expend the lives of our soldiers, deprive children of their parents, dads, moms, goes to war, some never come back, or at least not alive. Others come back with physical damage if they survive, and some with mental, psychological problem. In other words, we sacrifice a lot to take the country to war so that we can bring democracy to those countries. Noble cause, isn't it? Who would not appreciate something like that? That we of our soldiers, we put our country on hold, we deprive families of their loved one, and yes, we spend taxpayers' money for a noble cause, of course. If you believe that those wars were justified, if you believe that they were necessary, regardless. That is always the reason our government give to go to war. Now, there is always protest against such adventures because it is costly, not just in terms of money, but in terms of lives. But no matter where you stand in this conversation, there are some people who are completely against war. I happen to fall not too far away from that line. There are people who would like to be at war for any little stupid things. The Rambos, they want to go to war because they want to show off our military power. They want everyone in the world to bow to American power. As far as they're concerned, there should never be any reason not to. But because of the way our system of government works, each administration has to justify going to war. The past 70 years, however, presidents have been pretty much free I've had free reign in terms of, even if we don't go to full-fledged war, but they've been waging war without any say from Congress. But that's not really the point we're trying to bring forth. The major point is we go across the world waging wars because we believe that people should live in freedom. People should be free. Freedom of speech. People who live in authoritarian regime, under authoritarian regime, do not have that kind of freedom. Freedom to move about. So when the United States of America goes to liberate, in quotation, a country from the authoritarian regime, it's something to cheer about, because it is, although we did not get to become the liberators of the world, but we took upon ourselves to do it because, well, we do have the means, we do have the resources, and we go and we wage war, we liberate people, country, from dictators, from authoritarians. Now, I might add, we do that really on a very selective basis. We know that because we bomb Libya, Gaddafi, because we know there is no way for Libya to retaliate. We bomb Iraq because we know there is no way for Iraq to retaliate. But we're having a hard time liberate North Korean from the regime, because we are rightfully scared that if we try to go to war with North Korea, the outcome will not be as pleasant. In other words, if you're following the logic, there are ways to achieve certain things without expending the lives of our soldiers, without spending the taxpayers' money, because we know how not to do that. So we only engage in those activities of war when selectively, when the country in question, we know that we can simply get victory there. And even if we succeed, such was in the case of Iraq, the success was purely fictional, because Iraqian would tell you many millions, as a matter of fact, were displaced. According to the latest result, more than 300,000 Iraqis died. Civilian, we're not talking about military. Civilian died. So much for liberating them from a dictator. Instead, we killed them. Again, That's not even what we're here to talk about. I'm trying to make the point that we use rationale to go to war, spend our soldiers' lives, spend the taxpayers' money in order to bring democracy to that country, in order to liberate those people, in order to give them freedom of speech. Very noble cause. Remember Kathy Griffin? Well, she's a comedian. Well, you may not necessarily recall that particular picture, but I'm sure you will recall that one. The picture of Kathy Griffin holding a severe head of what made to look like Donald Trump, bloody head. She made a mistake. No, not the one that you're currently looking at. When she put that picture, when that picture hit social media, all hell broke loose. Kathy Griffin became, well, was abandoned by everyone, by comedian, by the entertainment industry, by everyone. Kathy Griffin was abandoned. Now you can have your own opinion about whether it's okay or it's not. I so happen to think it is okay for a comedian to use whatever tool that he or she has to make fun. Now I understand why Donald Trump and his people weren't laughing, but it was nevertheless a funny skit, I guess, that Kathy Griffin was trying to convey. Now, whether you agree with her or not is totally irrelevant to the conversation. You see, true democracy can only survive if we are all willing to defend the rights of even those we disagree with. Let me say that again. True democracy can only survive if we are all, and by we are all, I don't mean Democrats, I don't mean just Republican or just Democrat. If we are all willing to defend the rights of even those we disagree with. In other words, you could disagree with what Kathy Griffin did in terms of portraying a head, bloody head of the President of the United States. But everybody knows who Kathy Griffin is. She is a comedian. You may not like the joke, but what happened next is what seems to be the most troubling aspect of what we construe here in America as democracy. It seems that for the Republican in particular, democracy is whatever they want it to be. If they don't like what you say, if they don't like what you do, it's no longer democracy. But they can do anything and say anything. That is democracy. And that's what we've seen for many years now. We have a lot of our children being killed in school because they want our democracy to survive, because according to the Constitution, they have the right to bear arms. So it is fitting that they can use that aspect of the conversation to prove to want democracy to survive. Because it fits them, it fits their narration, their narrative, So it's fine and dandy. But if what is said by a Democrat, what is done by someone they don't like, or what is in the case of what Kathy Griffin did, that was what freedom of expression gives us the ability to do. Now, if Kathy Griffin cannot do that in the United States of America, imagine the difficulty people living in authoritarian regime would have. Despite the fact that here in America, we say that this is a country of democracy. Now, what I just mentioned, all that I just mentioned, doesn't have any bearing on liking or disliking. Is what happened next. Kathy Griffin's name was placed on terrorist list by the Trump administration. Every time she had to fly, her name has to be cleared because the Trump administration, this is what authoritarian regimes do. They don't like someone, they give you as much hard time as possible. In the case of Kathy Griffin, of course, if they could kill her, that's what the Trump administration would have done. So they use the power of the Oval Office in a democratic system to harass an American citizen because they don't like how she expressed herself. How about that for democracy in America? We spend the lives of our soldiers, we spend billions of dollars in taxpayers' money to go to war to liberate other countries from authoritarians in order for them to have this type of freedom, but here at home we condone our government doing the same thing to American citizens. And the reason I blame the media for going along with being silent about this problem, I blame the entertainment industry for being silent and trying to distance themselves from Kathy Griffin. But I did also blame Kathy Griffin because she apologized for her joke. And to me, that's where the problem, at least that's part of the problem. As a comedian, you have the right to make jokes. Kathy Griffin didn't threaten to kill Donald Trump. Kathy Griffin used her artistic talent to make fun of the President of the United States, which is acceptable in the system. So the entertainment industry moved away from her. The media stayed silent, and in the meantime, a citizen of the United States, an American citizen, going through terrible time, the kind of difficulty, the kind of problem you would have, you would only imagine that people living in authoritarian regime would have. Now contrast that. You don't have to like what someone does. That's actually besides the point. You don't have to like it. That's the whole point of democracy. That we have the freedom of the speech, the freedom of expression. True democracy cannot survive if we are not all willing to fight for the rights of even those we disagree with. That's what make a democracy work. Because people in government would always abuse their power. And if you look at Donald Trump, he has done that since day one, even before he assumed the presidency, even before he took the oath of office, he was doing what was not acceptable for an elected president. The democracy that we have today doesn't belong to an individual. It can only survive when we all recognize that in order to keep it, to keep that freedom, to preserve that freedom, we, the citizens of this country, we the people, we cannot be siding with administration, because today is administration X, tomorrow it's going to be administration Y. We have to stand for our democracy, not for Donald Trump, not for the Republican Party, but for democracy, for freedom. True democracy can only exist, can only survive if we are all willing to stand for the rights of even those we disagree with. We spend our soldiers' lives. We put the lives of armed personnel on hold. We change their lives sometimes drastically. We spend billions of dollars in taxpayers' money to go to war to liberate people so that they can have this type of freedom. And yet at home, we all sit back and let the Trump administration to treat Kathy Griffin as a terrorist. The media stays silent. So much for the media being the voice of the people. The media stay completely silent. The entertainment industry, which was supposed to push back and make certain that Kathy Griffin got the support that she needs in order to continue doing what she does, which is make fun of people, of politicians. That's freedom of expression. But instead, we just return to our cocoon and let an American citizen being subjected to treatment that we here as a country, we subjected the Al-Qaeda people to. Kathy Griffin's name was added to the terrorist list by the Trump administration. And you think that's okay? Because you don't like what she did? You think that's okay? It's not okay. And I say shame on the media for staying silent on that. And shame to the Hollywood crew, to the Hollywood people who simply stay silent and did nothing and said nothing and let Kathy Griffin fight something that all of us were supposed to be in and defending her, because freedom of speech was at stake and she paid for that. So much for democracy in America.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but it's definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Who is Amy Klobuchar? You may notice that behind me there is a banner that says Healthcare 2020. It is my way of reminding you that the 2020 presidential election is not about choosing a candidate only. It is also about your healthcare. It is also about your health. As Mr. Trump has been on the campaign trail every so often and telling the crowds that he would protect the constituent from pre-existing condition in terms of health coverage. Now, I must say in all fairness, sometimes I'm baffled by the fact that people who actually listen to Donald Trump believe anything he said. Is the rule of thumb that I have personally. Anything that Donald Trump says, you can rest assured 99% of the time it's false. It's just the opposite. Now, if you use that, at least you'll keep your sanity and you know how to act, how to vote. Because if you base what you're doing on what Donald Trump says, it is a guarantee that your decision is being based on false premise. Now, the banner say Healthcare 2020 is because your healthcare, your health is on the ballot in 2020. You see, the Republicans have been trying for almost 8 years now to get rid of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. During the Trump administration, they already tried twice. Now, the signature Obamacare has two major provisions that are highly attractive. The first one is the fact that insurance company before Obamacare could easily refuse to insure people with pre-existing condition. And in case you don't know, pre-existing condition ran anywhere from being pregnant. Yes, you heard correctly. Ran from being pregnant to, well, terminal illness. And the insurance company would determine what they decide pre-existing condition was. Obamacare changed that. That's one major attractive thing. The second one is, before Obamacare, children could be insured by their parents, could stay on their parents' insurance until age 21. Now they can stay until age 26. Now, there are other aspects, but I use those two as our starting point. Donald Trump has been saying that he proposed that he would have a healthcare insurance that would guarantee you get coverage for pre-existing condition. That's what he's been saying to those people cheering him and not knowing that everything that Donald Trump say is a lie. In fact, it is also a lie, because as he is out there saying that to those people, he has a group of lawyers arguing in court. One, to get rid of Obamacare altogether. And two, which is the important part you should pay attention to, is to say that even if we cannot just completely get rid of Obamacare, they arguing that coverage for pre-existing condition is illegal. Now, for someone who promised you to give you coverage for pre-existing condition, why would he try to get rid of it and argue that it is illegal? Can you answer that? Donald Trump is a liar at heart. He knows that by doing that to you, there is absolutely nothing you would do about it. There is absolutely nothing you can do about it, because by the time that he finished doing that, it's over with. So if you vote for him to be reelected, then there is absolutely nothing you can do to him. I even wonder if the devil lies as that much. I really do, because I never seen, never encounter, never live with, never cross paths with anyone who lies in everything that he says. But the sad part is the fact that those people he's lying to, so that's why 2020 presidential election cannot just be another presidential election. So in the spirit of introducing you a candidate vying for the office, let me introduce you to Amy Klobuchar. Now, who is she? Who is Amy Klobuchar? Now, Amy is her current post. She is a U.S. Senator from the state of Minnesota. Now, she has had that position, she has been in that post, I should say, since 2007, which means, well, 2007, since 10 years. Now, she's been there for, well, more than a decade. Amy Klobuchar was born Amy Jean Klobuchar. She was born in May of 1960 in Plymouth, Minnesota. She's now 58 years old. She's been married since 1993, and with her husband John Bessler, they have one child. Amy went to Yale University, where she got a bachelor degree, and she continued her study at the University of Chicago, where she obtained a Juris Doctor degree. Yesterday I mentioned that I noticed that actually it looks like 90% of the people who vie for the Democrat nomination, not only they have a degree in whatever field that they chose, but it seemed that all of them did go for a Juris Doctor degree as well. So did Amy. Now, before Amy jumped in politics, I believe she worked at a law firm. Actually, right before she jumped into politics, I believe that she was the county attorney for Hennepin County in 1998. Now, she was first elected to the Senate in 2006, and she did make history because she was the first elected female U.S. Senator. She was re-elected in 2012 and again in 2018. Now, Amy Klobuchar was not a name, even the name would have been a little bit weird to even pay attention to. But you may remember during the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, there was an exchange, an interesting exchange between Amy Klobuchar and Brett Kavanaugh. She is, of course, former prosecutor, and she seemed to have an interesting style in terms of the way that she tried to question an interviewee about any topic. And that was during those moments, the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, that was during those moments that Amy Klobuchar, among others, I did mention before that Kamala Harris also did make her mark, and the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, if anything, did propel those individuals, Amy, Kamala, Cory Booker, did propel those individuals into the spotlight. And of course, once you get the spotlight, you are more or less inclined to try to keep it. As such, you notice that Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, and Cory Booker, all three of them did were in the spotlight, and all three of them are bidding for the presidency of the United States. Now, I don't know if it's just sheer coincidence, but nevertheless, it seems that spotlight has a way of shaping people's mind. Now, when Amy Klobuchar did graduate at Yale, magna cum laude, and the degree that she obtained there, as I mentioned earlier, was Bachelor in Political Science. That was in 1982. And she was also a member of the Yale College Democrat. She was also a member of the Feminist Caucus. Now, during her time at Yale, Klobuchar did spend some time as an intern for then Vice President and former Minnesota Senator Walter Mondale. I don't know if you recall Walter Mondale, but she was an intern for Walter Mondale. She wrote an interesting thesis, Uncovering the Dome. That was a thesis about politics surrounding the building of Hubert H. Humphrey. Now, all that is interesting to know about Mrs. Klobuchar, because obviously as someone vying for the presidency of the United States, you want to know as much as possible about that individual. Now, you may recall that when Klobuchar, before she made the announcement that she would consider a bid for the presidency of the United States, just a few days before, it could have been a week or so, but it wasn't really a long time, she was already in the spotlight. And the reason she was in the spotlight is because as she was contemplating a run for the presidency of the United States, I believe two of his current staff withdrew their names from helping or participating in her election campaign. In other words, they say, we don't want to be part of that. And the story behind that was the fact that they say that she's not really much of a people person. The way that she treated them, it's as if they never done anything good, they never done anything right. So those two members did not see any reason to put themselves in a predicament. Especially campaign is high pressure, so if they suffer this type of treatment in the office, they can imagine what that would be in the campaign trail. So they withdrew their name. Amy Klobuchar did try to address that. She did. Now, I don't know if she did to their satisfaction, but she proposed to do better, to be more conscious of her ways dealing with people in her helping her in the process. Now, what is Amy Klobuchar idea? What is she running on? What is the theme that she wants to use to excite people, to get people to support her? Now, Amy Klobuchar has been in politics for 12 years. She declared her intention on February 10th. So she wasn't the first one, nor she wasn't at the beginning of the process, nor she's at the end, because as it stands today, more candidates are still coming out. In fact, tomorrow we're expecting Joe Biden to make an announcement that he too would try to clinch the Democrat nomination. Now, what's Amy Klobuchar's big idea for the economy? She wants to make it easier for small and mid-sized U.S. businesses to export goods worldwide. She wants to make it easier for small and mid-sized U.S. businesses to export goods worldwide. Now, as we mentioned before, when we feature a candidate, we always take a look at the candidate's big idea and try to envision what that would be like in the campaign trail. Now, keep in mind that whatever big idea a candidate has, that doesn't mean they're not going to talk about other ideas, other policies and pieces of legislation and policies. But What that means is when they introduce the big idea is to say this is what represents a priority for that candidate, just like I mentioned before, when in 2012, if Mitt Romney were to win the presidency, his big idea was to repeal and replace Obamacare the first day. That was his big idea. So, how would that big idea fare in the campaign trail? As I mentioned before, maybe the reason I'm not a candidate because I really admire people who are in politics, because you have to have your brain has to be wired differently in order for you to crisscross the country shaking hands and asking people to vote for you because you have an idea, you think that idea would be good for the country. As such, Mrs. Klobuchar consider introducing measures to make it easier for small and mid-sized U.S. businesses to export goods worldwide. I try to envision how she would market that idea and make it exciting for people to rally behind her and say, this is exactly the person we want to represent us. I don't know. The policy would be obviously a good policy, because making it easier for businesses to export goods would make it easier for businesses to make more money, not just sell here in the United States but be able to sell overseas. That's a great idea, but how is Mrs. Klobuchar going to frame that big idea and turn it into an exciting theme to rally support for her to become the nominee? I have no idea, because I cannot visualize it. I cannot envision how that's going to happen. But then again, that's why I'm not a candidate for anything. So we'll be watching Mrs. Klobuchar, how she's going to rule people with this particular big idea that she has.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, the Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
I hope this presentation was of some use to you. If you have questions, suggestions, comments, criticism, do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have a particular topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it. We will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. In the meantime, we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Good day.